The heavy oak doors of the Crestwood Executive Club were designed to keep the noise of the city out, but they did nothing to filter the unmistakable look of disgust on the concierge's face. Nora Hayes wheeled herself over the plush carpet, her movements precise and practiced. She had spent the morning navigating a labyrinth of construction sites for her latest project, and it showed. Her oversized, faded navy sweater had a noticeable snag near the hem, and her comfortable denim jeans carried a faint smudge of dust by the knee, a minor casualty of transferring into her wheelchair in a rush. She carried no designer handbag, just a battered leather satchel resting on her lap. At 36, Nora possessed a quiet, unshakable confidence that she never felt the need to wear on her sleeve. She had built a formidable logistics and real estate portfolio from absolute zero after a life-altering accident. Long after most people had written her off, she stopped at the polished mahogany reception desk. "Good evening. I have the Grand Solstice room reserved under Nora Hayes," she murmured, offering a polite, neutral smile. The concierge, a sharply dressed young man whose gold nameplate read Cameron, did not return the smile. He looked down at her faded clothes, glanced at the scuffed metal of her chair's push rims, and let his eyes linger on the frayed edge of her sweater. He typed something into his tablet with slow, exaggerated taps. "I see a booking here." "Yes," Cameron replied, his tone dripping with practiced corporate apathy. "However, the Solstice Room is our premier executive space. I'm afraid there has been a system error with your online deposit. We cannot honor this reservation." Nora rested her hands on her wheels. "It isn't an error. The booking is fully paid, and the catering deposit cleared 3 days ago. The confirmation email is right here." She tapped her phone screen and placed it on the counter. Cameron didn't even look at the device. He adjusted his tailored blazer and leaned forward, his voice dropping to a condescending whisper. "Madam, I don't know how you bypassed our screening process, but this is a private, high-tier establishment. We maintain a very specific standard for our clientele. I'm going to have to ask you to step aside so I can process a refund." Nora did not flinch. She simply watched the man, quietly cataloging his behavior. Before she could articulate her refusal, the brass double doors behind her swung open, letting in a gust of crisp evening air and the loud, booming voice of a man she hadn't heard in 4 years. Who would walk into the club at exactly the wrong moment? "Cameron, tell me you saved a meeting space for me," the voice commanded. Nora recognized the cadence instantly. She didn't need to turn her wheelchair around to know it belonged to Victor Sterling. 4 years ago, Victor had been her boss at a major corporate supply firm. When Nora had her accident, Victor hadn't even waited for her to finish physical therapy before terminating her contract, coldly citing that she would be a visual liability to the fast-paced, aggressive corporate image he demanded. Victor strode up to the counter, shaking off his expensive cashmere coat. He focused entirely on the concierge, treating the woman in the wheelchair beside him as if she were a piece of misplaced luggage. "Mr. Sterling, always a privilege," Cameron beamed, his entire demeanor shifting from icy to utterly sycophantic. "We are entirely booked tonight due to the tech summit in town." However, Cameron's eyes flicked sideways to Nora. Victor finally looked down. His confident, shark-like smile froze, twisting quickly into a mask of amused pity. Nora Hayes. "Well, isn't this a surprise?" "Hello, Victor," Nora answered smoothly, her face giving away absolutely nothing. "Still rolling along, I see." Victor chuckled, looking her up and down. He took in the faded sweater and the dusty jeans. "I heard you tried to start some little freelance gig after I had to let you go. Judging by the look of things, it hasn't quite panned out. What brings you to a place like Crestwood? Did you get lost looking for the public library?" "I have a room booked," Nora replied quietly. "Or at least, I did, before your concierge decided my wardrobe didn't match the upholstery." Victor let out a sharp, breathless laugh and looked at Cameron. "She booked a room here, Cameron. This woman used to organize my spreadsheets before her. Unfortunate circumstances. There must be a mistake." Cameron nodded eagerly. "Exactly, Mr. Sterling. I was just explaining to her that our system flagged an error." Nora kept her hands steady on her lap. The familiar sting of being underestimated washed over her, but instead of anger, she felt a deep, profound calm. She knew exactly what she had in her satchel and what was about to happen next. How far would Victor go to take what wasn't his? Look, Nora, Victor sighed, adopting the tone of a parent speaking to a stubborn child. I have a crucial dinner meeting with international investors in 20 minutes, and I need a private space. Crestwood is booked solid, but it seems there's one room hanging in the balance. He turned his back to her, resting his elbows heavily on the mahogany counter. Cameron, transfer her mistake booking to my corporate account. Put me in the solstice room. Give her $50 from petty cash to get a cab home. It's the least I can do for a former employee. I am not a former employee asking for charity. Victor, Nora warned, her voice perfectly level. That reservation is under my name. The transaction is complete. Cameron ignored her entirely. His fingers flew across his tablet. I'm bypassing the system now. Mr. Sterlingish, I'll have the digital access card for you in just a moment. As for you, madam, Cameron finally looked back at Nora. The system has been updated. You no longer have a reservation with us. Nora watched the reflection of the tablet screen in the mirrored pillar behind the desk. She saw the reservation shift. They had actually done it. They had hijacked a confirmed paid booking purely based on her appearance and Victor's misplaced sense of authority. Cameron, Nora asked, her voice soft but carrying a strange, heavy weight. Are you absolutely certain you want to process a manual override on a finalized contract? Cameron paused, clearly irritated that the woman in the torn sweater was still speaking. I am certain that I am doing my job, which is to protect the integrity of this club. Now, I have accommodated you enough. He placed a sleek black keycard on the counter and slid it toward Victor. Victor snatched it up, looking down at Nora with a triumphant smirk. What would Nora do now that the digital key was out of her hands? Don't feel too bad, Nora. Victor added, adjusting his gold cufflinks. The business world moves fast. Some of us are built to keep up, and some of us get left behind. Have a safe ride home. Nora didn't move toward the door. Instead, she locked the brakes on her wheelchair with a sharp, metallic click that echoed in the quiet foyer. The sound made Cameron's jaw tighten. He hated disruptions in his lobby. Madam, I need you to vacate the premises immediately, Cameron demanded, his voice raising just enough to catch the attention of a few affluent guests lingering near the coat check. Nora crossed her arms over her faded sweater. I'm not leaving. I have every legal right to be in this lobby. Victor groaned, checking his watch. Nora, please don't make a scene. It's pathetic. You're embarrassing yourself. You don't belong in a place like this. You never did. Just take the hint and leave with whatever dignity you have left. Dignity isn't measured by a cashmere coat. Victor, Nora replied, and it certainly isn't measured by stealing a room from a disabled woman just because you think you can. A young hostess standing near the dining room entrance lowered her menus, watching the exchange with wide, uncomfortable eyes. Cameron's face flushed red. He reached for the heavy brass telephone on his desk. I'm out of patience, Cameron hissed. Leave before I call security. I will have you physically escorted off the property for trespassing. Nora looked directly into Cameron's eyes. Call them. I want this to be thoroughly documented. Victor shook his head, muttering something under his breath as he turned toward the VIP hallway. Would the key card actually let him in? Victor walked briskly down the corridor, swiping the black key card against the glowing panel beside the Grand Solstice room. A red light flashed on the panel. Access denied. Victor frowned and swiped again. Red light. He looked back down the hall toward the reception desk. Cameron, this card isn't working. Before Cameron could answer, the heavy footsteps of two men in dark suits echoed across the marble floor. Security had arrived. They flanked Nora's wheelchair, looking from her to Cameron for instructions. This woman is trespassing, Cameron stated, pointing a manicured finger at Nora. She was denied entry and is now refusing to leave. Escort her out. One of the guards, a burly man with a calm demeanor, looked down at Nora. Ma'am, we don't want any trouble. Let's just head toward the exit. There won't be any trouble, Nora murmured. She didn't look at the guards. Instead, she unzipped her battered leather satchel and pulled out a slim, silver tablet. "Hey, don't ignore them. Nora," Victor called out, marching back from the hallway, still holding the dead keycard. "Just swallow your pride. It's over." Nora tapped her screen 3 times. She accessed the club's back-end financial portal, a system she was intimately familiar with. She located the Solstice room, found the new entry under Victor Sterling, and hit a single button. Freeze account and lock protocol. "Cameron," Nora asked without looking up from her screen, "what is your employee identification number?" Cameron scoffed. "I am not giving a trespasser my ID number. Guards, remove her." The guard reached out, placing a hand hovering near the handles of Nora's wheelchair. "If you touch this chair," Nora warned, her voice finally losing its soft edge, turning into something cold and sharp, "you will be violating a patron's physical space and opening yourself to immediate termination. Step back." The guard hesitated. There was something about her tone. It wasn't the frantic screaming of an angry customer. It was the absolute, unbothered certainty of someone who held the reins. He lifted his hands and took a half step back. What was Nora doing on her tablet? Cameron slammed his hand on the desk. "What are you doing? Get her out." Nora set her tablet on her lap. She pulled out her outdated smartphone and dialed a direct internal extension. The phone rang twice. "Marcus," Nora spoke into the receiver, her voice steady. "I'm in the main foyer. We have a compliance situation at the front desk regarding a stolen reservation. Come down immediately." She ended the call before the person on the other end could reply. Slipping the phone back into her pocket, Victor laughed loudly. "What is this, Nora? Who did you just call the police? You're going to waste everyone's time over a room you can't even afford." "I didn't call the police, Victor," Nora answered simply. Cameron let out a harsh breath, his fingers frantically tapping his screen as he realized the system was entirely frozen. "I don't know what kind of stunt you're pulling, lady, but you don't know anyone here. The only people with direct internal lines are executive management, and they certainly don't take calls from vagrants." "You're about to find out exactly who takes my calls," Nora replied, adjusting her sweater. The tension in the lobby was palpable. The few guests who were present had stopped talking entirely. The security guards stood frozen, unsure of who was actually in charge. Cameron was sweating, staring at a flashing red error message on his terminal that read, "Master override initiated." "The system is completely locked," Cameron muttered, panic bleeding into his voice. "Someone has initiated a security freeze on the Solstice room." "That would be me," Nora admitted casually. Victor sneered. You're hacking the club now. You've lost your mind." "Nora, you always were unstable." A soft chime echoed through the lobby. The private glass elevator, located behind the front desk, a lift that only operated with a biometric scan, slowly opened its doors. Who was stepping out? Who was? A man in his late 50s stepped out of the executive elevator. He wore an immaculate charcoal suit, his silver hair perfectly styled. This was Marcus Thorne, the general manager and director of operations for the Crestwood Club. Cameron's face immediately lost its color. He stood up straight, hurriedly smoothing his tie. "Mr. Thorne, I apologize for the commotion. We have an unruly person in the lobby who bypassed our payment portal and is refusing to leave, but security is handling it." Marcus did not look at Cameron. He did not look at Victor. His eyes scanned the lobby until they landed on the woman in the wheelchair in her faded sweater. Marcus bypassed the front desk entirely. He walked with a swift, purposeful stride straight toward Nora. When he reached her, the director of one of the most prestigious clubs in the city did something that made the entire room freeze. He bowed his head slightly in a gesture of profound professional respect. "Ms. Hayes," Marcus murmured, his tone filled with genuine deference. "Your team wasn't scheduled to arrive for another hour. You didn't tell me you were coming in early. I wanted to see how the evening shift operated without an executive presence." "Marcus," Nora replied calmly, "it seems I chose an enlightening evening." Victor stared at the two of them, his mouth slightly open, the dead keycard slipping from his fingers. "Wait, you know her?" Marcus finally turned to look at Victor, his expression hardening into stone. "Of course I know her. Who are you?" "I'm Victor Sterling, CEO of Sterling Logistics. I'm a VIP guest here. Victor puffed up his chest, trying to reclaim his crumbling authority. Your concierge was just taking care of my booking because this woman was causing a scene and blocking the lobby. Marcus looked back at Nora. What happened here? Nora picked up her tablet and handed it to Marcus. What would the data show? Nora didn't raise her voice, and she explained the situation. I booked the Solstice room under my own name to prep for my team's arrival. When I got here, your concierge decided my clothes and my chair didn't fit the brand image. So, he manually canceled my paid contract and handed the access to Mr. Sterling. Marcus looked at the screen, reading the digital footprint of the transaction. The silence in the lobby was deafening. He slowly lowered the tablet. He turned to Cameron, who was now gripping the edge of the mahogany desk to keep his hands from shaking visibly. Cameron, Marcus asked, his voice dangerously quiet, did you void a finalized paid contract to accommodate a walk-in? Sir, I was protecting the club's image, Cameron stammered, his eyes darting frantically. Look at her. She looks like she just crawled out of a construction site. Mr. Sterling is a high-net-worth individual. I made a judgment call for the good of the establishment. The establishment, Marcus repeated. He let out a dry, humorless sound. He turned back to face the lobby, ensuring his voice carried. Mr. Sterling, Cameron. Stone, Marcus announced. Allow me to formally introduce you. This is Nora Hayes. She is the founder of Hayes Capital. More importantly, her firm finalized the acquisition of the Crestwood Hospitality Group last month. She is the majority owner of this building. You didn't just cancel a guest reservation. You attempted to evict the owner from her own property. Victor took a literal step backward. The color completely drained from his face. Owner, that's impossible. She was my supply manager. I fired her. She was ruined. Nora turned her wheelchair to face Victor fully. She spoke with the devastating calm of someone who had already won the war years ago. You fired a woman who had just lost the use of her legs because you thought she was broken. Victor, Nora said, you thought my value was tied to how fast I could fetch your coffee, but while you were busy trying to maintain your aggressive image, I was busy buying the building you're standing in. Victor opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. How would the staff react to this revelation? Victor looked at the torn hem of Nora's sweater, then at the vast, opulent lobby around them, his brain failing to reconcile the two images. Nora turned her attention away from him, dismissing him entirely. She looked at the front desk. Cameron, Nora called. The concierge flinched. Miss Hayes, I had no idea. If I had known who you were, Miss... That is exactly the problem, Nora interrupted, her voice steady and absolute. If you knew I owned the building, you would have treated me with respect. But because you thought I was just a disabled woman in cheap clothes, you treated me like dirt. You broke a contract to give my property to a man in a nice suit. Cameron swallowed hard, a bead of sweat tracing down his temple. I can fix this. I can reinstate the booking immediately. I'll apologize. No, you won't, Nora replied, because you don't have access to the system anymore. I revoked your administrative credentials 5 minutes ago. She looked at Marcus. Process his termination, effective immediately. Hand him his personal belongings, and ensure he is blacklisted from employment at all Hayes Capital properties. Damn. Marcus nodded sharply. Consider it done. Security, please escort Cameron to the back office. The two security guards immediately moved behind the desk. Cameron didn't argue. He looked utterly defeated as he was led away, his polished corporate facade completely shattered. Nora then turned to Victor. He was standing awkwardly, clutching his leather briefcase, the arrogant posture completely gone. As for you, Victor, Nora murmured, the Solstice room is unavailable. And even if it wasn't, we reserve the right to refuse service. I suggest you find another venue for your international investors, though, at this hour, you might have to settle for a public diner. Victor's jaw tightened. You think you're so smart, Nora. You think this proves something. It proves that you have exactly 20 minutes to find a new meeting spot. Nora answered. Goodbye, Victor. Stripped of his audience and his power, Victor turned and walked out the heavy glass doors into the cold night. What would Nora do with the empty reception desk? The lobby was quiet again. The toxic tension that had choked the room vanished, replaced by the soft hum of the air conditioning and the distant clinking of glasses from the dining area. Marcus walked over and picked up the black key card Victor had dropped. I've had the catering team prepping the solstice room since yesterday. Ms. Hayes, your team should be arriving shortly. Thank you, Marcus. Nora smiled, the sternness finally leaving her face. She looked toward the dining room entrance, where the young hostess was still standing, looking nervous but relieved. What is your name? Nora asked the young woman. Sarah, ma'am, she replied quickly. Sarah, you saw what happened here tonight. You looked uncomfortable, but you didn't have the authority to intervene, Nora said gently. Starting tomorrow, you are moving to the front desk as the interim concierge. I need people at the front who understand that hospitality means treating everyone with dignity before they prove anything to you. Sarah's eyes widened, and a genuine smile broke across her face. I won't let you down, Miss Hayes. I know, Nora said. Marcus handed Nora her updated master keycard. Shall I have the chef send out the first course? Just a pot of Earl Grey tea for now. Marcus, I want to enjoy the quiet before my team gets here. Nora agreed. She wheeled herself toward the VIP hallway. She didn't need the validation of strangers, nor did she need the groveling apologies of the men who had wronged her. She had built a fortress of security with her own hands and her own mind, and she had just established the boundaries of her territory. As the heavy oak doors of the solstice room opened for her, Nora looked down at the frayed edge of her sweater. She smiled. It was perfectly comfortable, just the way she liked it.